After 68 days and despite international condemnation, Israel continues its total siege on the Gaza Strip. During the day, dozens of civilians were killed in Khan Yunis and Al-Daraj. In Peru, Pedro Castillo said that the former prosecutor Patricia Benavides made up a case against him and that after 8 months of investigation it has not been proven that he was involved. In the United Arab Emirates, 198 countries adopted the final declaration of COP28, agreeing for the first time to move forward with a transition away from the fossil fuel industry and to limit global temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. After 68 days and despite international condemnation, Israel continues its total siege on the Gaza Strip. During the day, dozens of civilians were killed after intense bombardments against homes in Khan Yunis and Al-Daraj cities. At least 20 Palestinians were slaughtered early Wednesday morning, including several children, after Israeli occupation aircraft fired missiles at residential neighborhoods in Khan Yunis, south of the besieged Gaza Strip. Home attacks were further reported in Al-Daraj town in Gaza City, bringing about 25 deaths. Palestinian Health Ministry updated that killings amounted to a death toll of up to 18,412 people, most of them children and women, while over 50,000 have been injured since October 7th. At the same time as the shelling of Gaza, the Israeli occupation army continued its aggression against the city of Yemen in the occupied West Bank for the second consecutive day. The Israeli army caused great destruction after bombing 3 houses in the eastern part of the town with Energia missiles. Several bulldozers accompanied the military incursion, destroying infrastructure. Furthermore, residents denounced that soldiers shot at all those who wandered the streets while launching a campaign of raids and arrests. The violent assaults on Tuesday left 7 Palestinians killed. The UN General Assembly voted overwhelmingly on Tuesday to demand a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza in a strong demonstration of global support for ending the Israel-Hamas war. The vote also shows the growing isolation of the United States and Israel. After the United States on Friday vetoed a Security Council resolution calling for a humanitarian ceasefire, Arab and Islamic countries convened an emergency session of the 193-member General Assembly to vote on a resolution to the same effect. The General Assembly vote reflects the growing isolation of the United States, which refuses to join demands for a ceasefire. More than the United Nations or any other international organization, the United States sees itself as the only entity capable of persuading Israel to accept a ceasefire, as it is its closest ally and its largest arms supplier. The adopted text called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, compliance by all parties with international law, in particular the protection of civilians, the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, and humanitarian access. On Tuesday, a strike on a house in central Rafah killed at least 8 people and left 15 more injured, among them children. 3 of the dead were taken to Kuwaiti Hospital, while another 5 bodies were taken to nearby Abu Yusuf al-Nahar Hospital. Jihad Abu Romana, who lives next door to the destroyed house, described the immediate aftermath of the strike. He said that they heard a huge sound of an airstrike. It was dust destruction. He said he pulled a girl from the rubble just before the ceiling collapsed. The conflict ignited by Hamas' October 7th attack into southern Israel has already brought unprecedented death and destruction to the impoverished coastal enclave, with much of northern Gaza obliterated, more than 18,000 Palestinians killed, and over 80% of the population of 2.3 million pushed from their homes.
We heard a huge sound of an airstrike. It was dust, destruction here. I am their neighbor living beside them. I went out to see what was going on. I found one here was injured. You have here 8 houses that have been destroyed. There are 5 families in each house. At least it hit 40 families here. All our neighbors. Our beloved went in a second. What was their guilt?
Our neighbors were injured.
There was a little girl under the cement ceiling. It's God that wants her to live. The minute I pulled her out from under the ceiling, it collapsed right after. I arrived in a minute, as I am their neighbor, before the civil defense and the ambulance arrived.
The Yemeni armed forces claimed responsibility for the attack on the Norwegian tanker Astrina and stated that they will not hesitate to attack any ship that violates the above statements. They also stated they will not hesitate to attack any ship that violates the statement, recalling that the Yemeni armed forces reported over the weekend that as long as Israel does not allow humanitarian aid to enter the Gaza Strip, they will attack any vessel traveling to the ports of the country.
The naval forces of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a qualitative military operation against the Norwegian ship Astrina, which was loaded with oil and headed to the Israeli entity. It was targeted with a suitable naval missile. The Yemeni armed forces will not hesitate to target any ship that violates what was stated in the previous statements. The Yemeni armed forces confirmed that they continue to prevent all ships of all nationalities heading to Israeli ports from navigating in the Arab and Red Seas until they bring in the food and medicine that our steadfast brothers in the Gaza Strip need.
In Palestine, Israel's armed forces began pumping seawater into tunnels under the Gaza Strip. This action is part of Israel's ongoing offensive in Gaza to defeat the Palestinian resistance led by Hamas. This act concerns the Palestinian authorities as it will potentially lead to the destruction of natural water wells, raising serious concern about the humanitarian and environmental repercussions. The flooding of tunnels in a conflict zone like Gaza has serious humanitarian implications, especially if it disrupts access to essential resources such as water. Gaza already faces a difficult water situation with limited access to clean and safe drinking water. These actions jeopardize civilian infrastructure and basic needs such as water supply and are considered a violation of international humanitarian law. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. In Peru, Pedro Castillo said that the former prosecutor Patricia Benavides invented a Tarata case against him and that after 8 months of investigation has not been proven that he was involved. During a judiciary hearing, Castillo accused Benavides of being the leader of an alleged criminal organization and of supporting his imprisonment and his removal as president by ordering his detention while he was still president of the country and was enjoying presidential immunity. On the other hand, Castillo's lawyer, Eduardo Pachas, pointed out that after a year in prison, the prosecutor's office has not been able to prove that there was an incriminating agreement between Castillo and other people. In this sense, Pedro Castillo pointed out that even his family has been strongly harassed by people who want to incriminate him.
I am more than a year unjustly detained, unjustly imprisoned. The people who have elected me, more than 9 million Peruvians, to represent them and lead them. However, a whole strategic plan in advance, in collusion, the leader of an alleged criminal organization has been supporting not only my imprisonment, but the one who also planned part of my vacancy. What more proof, Your Honor? What more proof we have? Here I have it at hand, and Peru should know it.
The president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, confirmed his attendance to the face-to-face meeting with his counterpart from Guyana on Thursday in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to discuss the territorial dispute over the Guyana Esequiba, a territory seized in 1899 by the United Kingdom, and that Guyana refuses to settle the controversy through the Geneva Agreement. The report with Madeline Garcia.
In this same scenario, in August, In his program with Maduro Mas, the Venezuelan president invited the president of Guyana, Irfan Ali, to meet face-to-face to resolve the controversy over the Guyana Esequiba through the dialogue established in the Geneva Agreement, 4 months after so much refusal by the Guyanese government, with the support of Salah CARICOM and the president of Brazil, Lula da Silva. A step was taken.
I say we have done it. We have achieved face-to-face dialogue. It is a great achievement of the people of Venezuela, of the will of the sovereignty of Venezuela. It is one of the first great achievements of the historic step of December 3rd, because this is resolved by talking face-to-face. I say that.
But when and why was the dialogue of the Geneva Agreement interrupted? In 2015, the U.S. transnational company ExxonMobil acquired a world-famous oil field in maritime territory pending the demarcation between Guyana and Venezuela. In 2018, the Guyanese government made a move that Venezuela did not expect. It unilaterally took the case to the International Court of Justice and was endorsed by the Secretary General of the United Nations.
The action of the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, was erroneous. He exceeded his functions contained in the Geneva Agreement by choosing or supporting, in one way or another, the maneuver of Guyana to judicialize the case without having exhausted the mechanisms previously foreseen for a peaceful solution, such as mediation, good office, or conciliation, which are typified in Article 33 of the UN Charter and also included in Article 4 of the Geneva Agreement.
It's absurd that the United Nations, whose role is to promote peace, to promote dialogue, to promote agreements, to promote reconciliation, has acted in such a way that its behavior, as well as that of the International Court of Justice, has caused the conflict to increase and to aggravate. And that is the role of these institutions. The role is rather to seek solutions that are beneficial to peace and to agreement between countries.
Article 33 of the United Nations Charter states that any dispute which may threaten the maintenance of international peace and security shall be settled primarily by negotiation, mediation, and other peaceful means, and that the Council may invite the parties to use such means to settle their dispute. The Statute of the International Court of Justice also states that the countries in dispute must agree to its jurisdiction. They cannot force a state to recognize it, but a phone call changed everything.
On Friday, I spoke with the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, with whom we have marked difference because of the actions that he has taken outside the Geneva Agreement, and I explained to him very well the position of Venezuela with the statute of the International Court of Justice in hand, the position of Venezuela since 1945 on the non-recognition of the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice to settle the controversy of the Esequiba Guyana, and I asked him to play a positive role as Secretary General of the United Nations to resume the dialogue, and he committed to me that he would do so.
Vice President Delcy Rodriguez explained what the Geneva Convention can achieve and what the International Court of Justice cannot.
The defense of the Geneva Agreement of 1966, the only legal instrument that allows a peaceful, political, practical, and satisfactory solution for both sides, includes the concept of justice for both sides, which is definitely excluding a solution through the International Court of Justice.
The meeting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines on Thursday will be an expression of the Geneva Agreement. Venezuela will put on the table a formula for joint development based on the Petrocaribe experience.
In Argentina, the ultra-right-wing government of Javier Milei approved a new economic package that includes significant social cuts, the elimination of energy and transportation subsidies, and the devaluation of the Argentine peso by more than 50%. The Minister of Economy, Luis Caputo, announced a series of 10 measures which include, among other things, cutting the number of ministries from 18 to 9, increasing the exchange rate to 800 Argentine pesos and suspending all labor contracts entered into by the state with terms of less than 1 year. All this as part of the economic shock measures announced by Milei in his government's program. Minister Caputo admitted that the initiative will worsen the quality of life of Argentines for an undetermined period of time.
The state will not tender any more new public works and will cancel approved tenders whose development has not yet begun. As I said earlier, there is no money to pay for more public works that, as we all know, often end up in the pockets of politicians or businessmen on duty. For a few months, we will be worse off than before, particularly in terms of inflation.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. In the United Arab Emirates, 198 countries adopted the final declaration of COP28, agreeing for the first time to move forward with a transition away from the fossil fuel industry and to limit global temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The declaration calls for deep, rapid, and sustained reductions of greenhouse gas emissions by 43% by 2030 and 60% by 2035 in relation to 2019, with the objective of reaching zero emissions by 2050. Environmental movements consider that the text shows progress, but that the ideal would have been the progressive elimination of the fossil industry, with deadlines and concrete measures. In addition, the mechanisms for financing the transition, a crucial point for Latin America and a good part of the Global South, were left out of the text. China and Vietnam boost relations with a community of shared future on President Xi Jinping's second day in Hanoi. On Wednesday, Xi held separate meetings with Vietnam's President Vo Van Thuong and Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh. The Chinese leader announced that both countries would work together to create a China-Vietnam community with a shared future of strategic importance. In this context, 36 cooperation agreements were signed in areas such as politics, security, practical cooperation, public support, and maritime issues. Xi's visit marks 15 years of China's becoming a comprehensive strategic partner of Vietnam. Thousands of Slovakians took to the streets in Bratislava on Tuesday to protest criminal code reforms planned by the government. According to the rally organizers, around 15,000 people turned up for the protest in the capital alone, with similar demonstrations held in other Slovak cities. The reforms, which have been criticized by the opposition and the European Union, include easing the penalties for corruption and economic offenses, as well as waiving whistleblowers' protection for police officers. Last week, the government approved also the abolishment of a specialized prosecutor's office that oversees cases of high-level corruption and organized crime. Parliament plans to pass the controversial reform via fast-track legislative procedure, a step that has drawn criticism from the president and the opposition lawmakers. Organizers of Tuesday's protest indicate that similar actions would follow in the days to come. Relatives of the victims of the train tragedy demonstrated in front of the parliament in the town of Larissa in Greece. The demonstrations took place in Syntagma Square, where relatives and social organizations reiterated demand that the causes of the accident that took the lives of 57 people, mostly university students, on February 28th be revealed. Demonstrators urged parliamentary officials not to cover up for those responsible for the incident. In this context, demonstrators denounced the negligence and delay of the corresponding authorities in providing justice to the families of the victims and clarifying the causes of the collision. Spanish MPs gave the go-ahead for Parliament to examine the amnesty bill for Catalan separatists, with Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez conceded in exchange for the pro-independence movement's support for his return to power. The amnesty offer came 6 years after a failed independence bid by Catalan separatists, with Sanchez insisting it would help turn the page on Spain's worst political crisis in decades that still stirs up very raw emotions. For years, Sanchez opposed such a move, but recently admitted he had a change of heart. Pedro Sanchez said on Monday that even though such a step was complex to explain to the Spanish public, it was a necessary decision to learn from what happened in 2017 and move towards a resolution of the conflict with Catalonia. We have come to the end of this news brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscasts and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social media on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.